Andy, can you help me look? Do we have anybody else that we're expecting that's part of the group? Are we still missing people? Or Christina?
Let me see if I can find a way to see more people. There we go. Now I can see. Looks like most of us are here. Amy sent a message that she will be a little bit late. She'll
Let's see. I'm assuming you guys can hear me, but the exciting thing is I cannot hear any of you. So let me see if I can figure out what the problem is with my computer.
So just Amy, Andy?
Mm-hmm. That's
it.
Is Ray? I don't see Ray. Oh, here's Ray. I'm letting him in.
All right, now I can hear everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
So Teresa, we're just missing Amy, I think, and Amy told Andy she'd be a little bit late.
Okay.
Let's see if there's anybody else I am missing. Yeah, looks like just Amy, who is going to be a little bit late. We're good to go.
All right. Well, let me start out by just welcoming everybody. My name is Teresa Christopherson. I'm the Administrative Services Manager for Clackamas County Social Services. And I'm just going to help get this meeting kicked off. I'd love to be able to start by just going around the room and doing introductions so we know who is joining us today. I'd like to thank everybody for yet another year of Zoom meetings, right? We're enjoying starting to get some meetings back in person, but given the large group that is involved in this, and we want to make this as accessible as possible to the public, I appreciate being able to do these online meetings. So everybody I hope you're all patient with the format. Please let us know if you experience any technical problems or can't hear somebody, and we'll go from there. So I just introduced myself. I'm just going to run down the list that I'm looking at. I'll just say your first name, and if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about if you're representing an organization or if you're here. I'm going to include the folks that are here for public comment. Let us know if you would like to be able to make public comments so we can note that for later in the meeting. So let me start with Andy.
Good morning. You know what? I'm going to move this so that I'm actually looking at you. These cameras drive me nuts. I'm Andy Howe. I am the transit director for the city of Sandy. So I am here representing a transit agency this morning. Thank you all for joining us. This is important work.
And Dwight.
All right. I figured out how to go off mute. It's huge. Good morning, everyone. Dwight Brashear. I am the transit director for SMART, which is a public transit agency owned and operated by the city of Wilsonville. And I've been part of this grand committee for now, I don't know, four years. So this is great. And I echo Andy. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this. This is extremely important as we start to put together our plans. So thank you.
Eric.
Good morning, Eric Loomis. I'm with SMART. I'm the operations manager here, and I will be presenting some of SMART's projects that we have for you today.
Great. Joanne.
Joanne, you're on mute.
Okay, there I go. I'm Joanne McArdo, and I'm newly retired from SMART. I was a driver.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Karen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Burig. I am the Long Range Planning Manager at Clackamas County. I am not an official member of this committee, but I have been involved with helping to facilitate and move these meetings forward since the beginning. So I have a little small role within the agenda today.
Great. Kelsey.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kelsey Lewis. I am the grants manager at SMART, and I will also, with Eric, be presenting some of our projects.
Christina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christina Babcock. I am a human services supervisor at Clackamas County dealing with transit projects. And Teresa's, I think, the official member, but I'm here just to help out and do some presenting of the overall funding scenarios and things like that.
Michelle.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. I am Michelle Hildstab. I am the founder of Sandy's Helping Hands, a local nonprofit here in town. And I was invited by Andy to help out and be on this board. So here I am.
Thank you. Mike.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Strock. I am the new district manager taking over from Tom Strader for South Clackamas Transportation District based out of Molalla. And glad to be here, excited about my new position, learning a lot, drinking from a fire hose, and glad to be on this committee.
Okay. Paul. Looks like your mic is on, Paul, but I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear him?
On my screen, he looks frozen, Teresa.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Try it again. Paul, can you hear us? Well, Paul, let's come back to you. I'm going to go ahead and ask Ray to introduce himself.
Ray Atkinson, Peaham. I do transportation planning at Clackamas Community College and manage the CCC Express Shuttle. And today's commencement, so hopefully I may have some other things going on with commencement today, but I'll try to participate as much as I can.
Thanks, Ray. And Todd.
Todd Wood, Camby Area Transit Director. So we'll represent them.
Great. Paul, I'm going to loop back and see if we can catch you here for introductions. Are you able to, is your computer working? Are you able to speak? All right. Well, I'm still not hearing anything. I don't know if Paul's still frozen up or what's going on there. But with that being said, could somebody bring up the slideshow and we'll get the slideshow started here?
Yes, Andy, I think I need permission though. Oh, there we go. I got it. Can everyone see that?
All right. Well, let me once again welcome you all. This is the Clackamas County House Bill 2017 Transit Advisory Committee meeting that we're holding here on June 10th. The goal here is we have a couple of goals today. The first is to talk a little bit about this source of funding, what the implications are for the different programs that operate in Clackamas County. We're going to be taking care of, I'm going to call it some technical business that's associated with the operations of this committee. And then we're going to have an opportunity for each of the we call them small transit providers. So the different transit providers that operate outside of the TriMet Service District in Clackamas County to go through and talk a little bit about their transit agencies, to talk a little bit about the work that they've done with these dollars and what the impacts have been to their communities. So today's meeting, the best way to look at it is kind of a high-level overview of the Transit Advisory Committee process for these, what we call, the acronym that we use is Stif. and talk about what next steps are in the process. So Christina, if you could bring up the agenda, that'd be great. So the meeting agenda for today, we have welcome and introductions. There is an overview of the House Bill 2017 Stif funding. So we'll talk a little bit more detail about that funding is for and how it's distributed. Karen is going to walk us through a review of the intergovernmental agreement and bylaws that this committee is governed by. We'll see if we have any committee items that we need to cover. We'll also go ahead and look at the revenue projections that we're currently getting from ODOT and TriMet. And then we will go through and have the individual transit provider updates. So each transit agency that's on this committee is going to be going through and providing updates. Finally, we will have a formal public comment phase. And then at the very end of the meeting, we'll talk about next steps. So the specific work, really kind of the nuts and bolts of the work that we're going to be doing in this committee to wrap up our local approval process. So if you could move on to the next slide, Christina, let me talk a little bit about the Stif funding. So House Bill 2017, which is called Keep Oregon Moving, is a larger bill that had to do with funding transportation projects statewide. But the key component that we're going to be focusing on today is the State Transportation Improvement Funds, or STIF program. So state transit improvement funds, basically it's a provision that allows for a statewide transit tax that's charged against payroll. And those funds are then put in a pool and distributed based on where those funds are collected throughout the state of Oregon. So it provided essentially a new pool of funding, because this is not a program that had been enacted in the past, a new pool of funding to specifically support transit services. The initial funding activities that were included in the original bill include service enhancements or improvements, and also planning efforts to promote public transit. So those were kind of the two big call outs in the original rule. Project priorities, so how we rank project priorities, are things like improving transit for low-income households or for students, looking at low or no emissions buses, improving connections between communities, which I will tell you for Clackamas County is a huge priority, and reducing fragmentation between service providers. So providing tools or providing funding to improve coordination between transit services. One of the key points that I want to emphasize here is that for a project to be eligible for STIF funding, that project must be identified in a local planning process. So this meeting that we're having today is not a planning process that's endeavoring to identify new funding priorities for the STIF money. Those processes occur on the local level. So for example, the city of Sandy has their own transit development plan or transit master plan that they use. Same thing with Camby, same thing with Wilsonville. Clackamas County has its own transit development plan that has been approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And those priorities, which there's a thorough public process that goes on in the development of those plans, there's a lot of background and a lot of input that goes into the development of those plans. Those plans identify the projects that are then eligible for STIF funding. So really what we're doing is we're going through a process to look at the projects that have been called out in those local plans and identify funding priorities within those projects based on local need. So I think it's a great process in that respect. It really allows individual communities to identify where their priorities are. Next slide, Christina. So there's a couple of changes that happened in the last legislative session. The original STIF money rolled out to us in the second half of 2019. We're currently halfway through, I'm going to call it the second biennium of funding. We had about 2.5 years, the first biennium. We're in the middle of or toward the end of the first year of the second biennium. There were some changes that were made between the initial implementation of the bill to now. And those are changes that I just want you all to be aware of as we move forward with looking at projects and the impacts on the communities. One of the changes that was made is preservation of existing services. So there was a real recognition that there is frequently a gap between, particularly in terms of grant funds, the grant funds that are available, and the cost of doing business. So if you have a grant source that gives you X amount of dollars every year, but that's all you get every year, you don't have an increase in that grant funding source, but your costs are increasing, as we're all very well aware right now. For anybody who's filled their tank up with gas recently or has been to a grocery store, you know, the cost of living right now is rising rapidly. And that means that wages go up, other kinds of costs go up. So unfortunately, many of our transit programs statewide really didn't have a means to figure out how to absorb those increasing costs of doing business without an increase in funding. It's really hard if your revenue stays stable, but your expenses keep increasing. At what point do you cut service? Or do you start making significant reductions? So this was a change that was really put in place with the intent of making sure that the existing service that is useful to the communities, that has a tried and true track record of success, is allowed to be preserved in the face of what is often flat funding. There also has been impact, of course, with COVID. You know, that's resulted in a loss of revenue for many of the agencies, and the changing economic conditions can really have an impact on everybody's ability to do business. So the preservation of existing service was included in the last legislative session. The other piece that is new is what we call Stf Stabilization. So STF is the Special Transportation Fund program, and STF has been in existence in the state of Oregon. I feel like it's been maybe at least 15, if not 20 years. It's a long-running program that was established by the state that initially was funded primarily using cigarette taxes and a few kind of, I'm going to call them oddball sources of revenue, some fees associated with, we call it the lawnmower gas tax fee. So it was funded with these different sources of revenue, and that program is very specifically focused on services that are provided to seniors and persons with disabilities. We refer to that often in the transit world as E&D transportation. So the money that's been, the STF money has been a long-standing source of funding that really helps to support specifically services to our most vulnerable populations. Well, the good news is fewer people are smoking. The bad news is, guess what's happened to our cigarette tax revenue? It's dropped off precipitously in the last 10 years. That, along with other changes in revenue collection, have really created an impact to STF. And so it has intermittently, just to maintain stable levels of funding, to say nothing of, again, expanding to accommodate the increased need, has frequently had to be backfilled by temporary plugs from state general fund to keep the program whole and to keep the providers able to continue to provide those services successfully. So the legislature made a decision to take the Special Transportation Fund program and essentially use a portion of the STIF money. So again, confusing acronyms, right? STIF and STF. But basically STF and STIF are going to merge so that STF is no longer supported to the tune of about $10 million by general fund. And instead, for the statewide STIF money, a chunk is taken off the top before any other distributions are calculated. Basically, a chunk comes off the top to support the STF program. So this stabilizes the STF program. I'm really going to emphasize the importance of the STF program in Clackamas County. The STF program is what funds a lot of, supports a lot of the services for seniors and persons with disabilities that are offered by our different transit providers. It supports the senior center ride network, which gets seniors to services ranging from congregate meals to medical appointments. So it's really got it's really got a key role in the county, and the reduction of that would have had a very severe impact to the folks that are the most vulnerable in the county. So this is definitely a change in dynamic and a change in the funding process that we're going to be going through. But at the end of the day, I think the overall impact in terms of stabilizing the source of funding is extremely important and very welcome. So a couple of technical details about the STIF funding. So ODOT releases the funds directly to the qualified entity for each county in Oregon. Now in the Tri-County area in Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas County, TriMet as the largest mass transit district is considered to be the qualified entity. So unlike most of the other sources of funding that flow down to us through the state and feds, these dollars first go to TriMet as the qualified entity, and then will eventually flow out to the different transit providers via contract with TriMet. To access the funding, the qualified entity must submit a plan with a list of projects requested to be funded, and it has to include, remember that key information, what local plans are they provided from, are they derived from? So that's a key piece of information, that it has to be derived from a local plan. Those plans must be submitted to ODOT by November of 2022 for the next biennium's funding, which will start, I hope I get this right, is it July 1st of 23 is the start of the next biennium. So that's what we're working on right now in that process. TriMet has asked the transit providers in Clackamas County to work together to recommend projects. So back when this process was all first started and it was new and freshly minted and we were still working our way through the details, the Clackamas County providers rapidly realized that we needed to have a process within the non-TriMet area to be able to review projects, discuss projects, coordinate as needed, and then present those projects back to the TriMet group. So TriMet has their own transit advisory committee that will review the projects that we've approved, and then we'll recommend them on for funding. So that is what this process is this is really about us as Clackamas County providers taking a look at the projects that have been approved in local plans, making sure that they all align with the requirements of the STIF funding, and then approving them and moving them forward to the next step in the approval process. Once TriMet has approved those, then they will go on to the Public Transportation Advisory Committee for review, and ultimately to the Oregon Transportation Commission for final review and approval. So that is the process that we're going through right now. Next slide, please. And I believe that I am now going to pass it over to Karen to talk a little bit more about kind of some of the details of how we're going through this and the IGA that we developed.
Hey, Karen, before
Yes.
you get started, this is Christina. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and see if I can fix my screen here. So if you would bear with me for just a second.
Not a problem.
I'm flying blind. Okay, can you see that?
I can see your screen. I don't feel like it looks necessarily any different than it did before. And so I see also the presentation, but then your slides. So it's not like it's in presentation mode, but which it was before. So
Okay, hold on.
I think it's kind of fun, all of these different, online meeting tools. Google Meets is definitely one I'm not as familiar with. I don't use. Is this something that the city of Sandy uses? Andy?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that looks great. That looks
That's back to where it was before. So we'll leave it there.
okay. Well, we thought it would be good to have just kind of a touch base on these items. because it has been a while and we do have new members, and there are members from the public. So we wanted to talk about kind of what the actual bylaws for this committee are, and how it kind of came together. I think Teresa commented on that. Really, the transit providers came together in 2018 with the recognition that it was very important to have a local unified voice as a part of this process. Teresa was just commenting and sharing about the whole process, and one of the things that I often say is it's slightly complicated, right? You know, there's these different plans projects have to be in plans, and then those plans are pulled together to this STIF plan, and it ultimately these projects that move forward are folded together with in one big plan that's under the TriMet umbrella. So this IGA really talks about the different transit providers working together and providing a unified recommendation to the TriMet STIF committee. So back in 2018, Canby, Clackamas County, Sandy, the South Clackamas Transportation District, and Wilsonville all got together and signed an IGA that said that they would work together. It's actually a 60-year IGA is what it is. So we're locking arms together for quite some time. And as a part of that IGA, it basically referenced the bylaws on how this committee would work together. So in addition to the transit district members, membership on the committee is outlined in the bylaws. So those 5 transit districts are within the or transit organizations, or transit providers, I think I will call them. And but in addition, the committee needs to have representation from groups such as people with low-income households, people with disabilities, and seniors. And then the committee also needs to have representation from an educational institution, such as Clackamas Community College, as well as a public transit agency outside of Clackamas County. So that brings together all of the different representatives from the committee. And they are, I think we went through introductions earlier today. So those are all the different folks that are on this committee. So I can't, oh, there we go. The committee, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted, Christina. So there are a few things related to just committee items. I don't know if we have any additional questions related to the IGA specifically before we go into the bylaws. But like I said, they were developed in 2018. There's an agreement. Well, actually, where did I get the 60-year thing? I was looking at this. So maybe that changed. Maybe it wasn't 60 years. But I do see right now, just as an FYI, even though it isn't tomorrow, but time comes by closely, it does say in the IGA that it shall expire on December 31st, 2028. So we have a little time. It's 6 more years, but just to let you guys know that that's how it's written in the IGA. And the IGA was signed by all of these different parties. So unless there are any questions about the IGA specifically, we can talk a little bit about the bylaws. All right, I don't see any hands or anything, so I'm going to go over to the bylaws. And I do want to, this is more of it's just a reiteration of what Teresa said, but the bylaws specifically state a committee purpose. So the committee purpose, and I'm going to go ahead and read it just so everybody is familiar with it. As required by House Bill 2017 and the rules adopted by the state of Oregon, the purpose of this committee shall be to advise and assist the TriMet board in selecting plans or projects to be funded from the monies received from the Oregon Department of Transportation for public transit providers located outside the TriMet service boundary in Clackamas County. All the functions of the committee will be conducted in compliance with the most current rules and guidance as determined by the state of Oregon for HB 2017 public transit funding. So that's exactly what Teresa went over. The bylaws also outline the membership. So we talked about that. And the one thing that, and we'll kind of talk about this next with regards to approving committee members and electing a chair. There are officers are outlined within the bylaws. It talks about a chair will be elected by a simple majority and serve a 2-year term. And that chair will represent the committee on the TriMet Advisory Committee or board as needed. So just FYI, that's what the chair does. The chair also assists in developing the agenda for these meetings and being able to move these particular meetings forward. There are member responsibilities outlined, but basically the responsibility of a member is to attend the meetings. And then there is a section on committee operations, which talks about having these meetings to be able to pull these meetings together to discuss the plans. There is an interest, and originally when the committee was put together, we included a statement that the meetings will be held at the call of the chair no less than twice annually. And I know that how we have been handling these meetings is actually we have pretty much had them every other year, really directly in relationship to the development of the plans. And so that might be an item that the committee wants to talk about, is whether or not we either change the bylaws or we work to purposefully have these meetings on the kind of the off year of the plan adoption. And then there are other just very simple outlines about the meetings. And then it gives guidance on adoption and amendment of the bylaws. So with that, I would just ask if folks had any other questions about the bylaws for this particular committee. All right. Super. So we're moving on to approving the committee members. And I know that Andy and others have been working. I'm going to kind of looking at you, Andy. Maybe it would be helpful for us to really identify who the new committee members are, and then work with the committee to approve those members. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Sure. So Joanne, right there, is in the middle of my screen, and she is new to the committee. She is representing senior citizens on the committee. Mike is new to the committee in his position with South Clackamas. And Amy, who hasn't joined us yet, is also new to the committee as she replaced Patty Fink at Columbia Area Transit. I believe those are our only new members to the committee.
Great. Well, I guess what I would recommend is that one of the members of the committee make a motion to approve these new members. And then we can have the full membership. And then we can talk about electing a new chair.
I make a motion that we accept our 3 new committee members onto this committee for the next biennium.
Second. I don't know if you need a second.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion or questions? So with no discussion or questions, it's a good practice. We can have the existing committee members vote. And oh, it looks like there is a raise hand function. So we're going to work with, if you're an existing committee member, raise your hand if you approve this. Okay, sorry, my mic was off. So what I see, Todd Wood has his hand up, and Michelle and Andy and Dwight. Are there others that's what I?
Ray has his hand up as well.
Okay, Ray. Okay, Ray has his hand up.
Teresa had her there. It is.
Okay, I'm just kind of. All right. So I think that would allow the members to move forward. So with that, unless I guess I didn't officially ask if anyone opposed to that. So if anyone is opposed, no, no one's opposed. Okay, so welcome new members. With that, I think what we need to do is elect a chair, as I talked about in the bylaws. Oh, yeah. Was someone saying something?
Sorry, my phone is asking me if I'm here.
Oh, okay. So the next step is to identify a chair, and the chair represents at the HB 2017. That's what the bylaws say, as well as helps facilitate making these particular meetings happen. I would ask if any of the committee members want to talk about, the role of the chair and how that works from past experience, what you want out of, what you see that's most helpful with regards to the chair. Any past chairs want to speak up?
I think I'm the only past chair. So no, it's obviously working with this committee has been incredible. Certainly the small providers, which are represented by South Clackamas and Sandy and Canby, and then of course Mount Hood Express folks over at Clackamas County. We continue to meet obviously weekly, and so we have this unbreakable bond that has developed between us, which helps with developing our plans, because we're always looking at opportunities to tie our services together where we can, using technology. So anyway, I think it's a great experience for someone. I've done it twice now, and I think it's a lot of fun, and so I would like to share that fun with someone else if they are interested in doing it. It's a great group. It really is. It's easy. It's really just very simple. So we don't send anybody to your house or anything like that. You don't have to wash somebody's car or cut somebody's lawn or anything. Though I do those things for my friends as they ask. So.
You have never washed my car, Dwight.
You've got
Now I feel like we aren't really friends.
Well, I haven't watched the new one, right?
Okay, right.
Yeah. So, I'll get around to it.
So is there one of the members that is interested in serving as chair, or does another member want to recommend someone think about the chair?
After all that great stuff I said, no one's going to jump right in. I love it.
So really the role, okay, don't be afraid of this role. The role is to be able to communicate to and really attend a meeting, and be able to be a voice of this committee for perhaps one meeting. with TriMet. Isn't that accurate, Dwight?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think we're almost wrapping that whole thing up. So yeah, there's not a whole lot left there.
Yeah, and it wouldn't necessarily to be the representative on that HB 2017 committee meeting. It would be more communicating at the time, because one of the steps that happens, and I know all of you probably are more familiar when this actually is going to happen, but there's a presentation to the TriMet HB 2017 committee of the Clackamas County plans, and being able to speak to that. So
Yeah,
I might have to call someone out.
yeah, and I don't want to dig a hole deeper for myself, but I am the representative for Clackamas County on the TriMet Advisory Committee, and I have been again since the beginning because no one seems to want to take that job from me.
So are you willing to do it another, 2 years, Dwight?
Does the bylaws even allow that? I think I'm term limited, I thought.
I'm looking.
We're pretty easy going. I think we might be willing to waive the term limit if that's legally allowed and you're willing to serve again. If not, that's fine.
Well, the folks that know me, meaning the small providers that, I'll do whatever you guys need me and want me to do. You know that. I'm just trying to share the wealth of this experience. I mean, it's just, I can't even describe what it's like to be the chair of the Clackamas County Advisory Committee. It has changed my life in so many ways. I almost won the lottery because of being on this, the chair. So,
does anybody think that after that speech, Dwight shouldn't be chair? I mean, seriously? This life-changing role.
Help me out, Ray. I see Ray's out there. He looks like a chairperson. Andy's the president of the OTA. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. That's important stuff there.
All right, Dwight, I'm nominating you.
Oh, jeez. I don't think there's any second for that.
I second it. Hey, but at least I do I get the meetings together for you, Dwight, in your role as chair.
That you do, because that's what you do.
I ain't a mug.
Put it on a mug.
Okay, so I've heard a motion with a second that Dwight Brashear continue on as chair of this committee. Are there any other discussion? Should we just vote? All right, so everyone, and I'll see if I can do this better. It's really hard for me to see the raised hands, but I'm gonna try it again. Raise your hand if you support Dwight being chair for another term. Oh, that's kind of cool.
I was gonna say, did you find the people button? Because that'll let you see who raised their hands. There's a list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of, I found it, that's great. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 have voted in favor. All right, so if so you guys can put your hands down. Is there anyone opposed? I think Dwight's hand is still up for opposed. Okay, I don't see any hands up for opposed. Any abstentions? Not voting. All right. I think we have a new chair. I mean, the same chair. I think we have a chair. With all of that, I think my role in this meeting has come to a conclusion. So, Christina, I'm going to pass it back over to you to let you continue on with the presentation.
I think Christina had to step off for a minute. Andy, do you have the slideshow up? Okay.
All right, so let's navigate this thing. We've done this before, so it shouldn't be too painful.
I'm trying.
Take your time.
Okay, so can you guys see that? I understand you can see the sidebar too. No.
Yeah.
Oh, I
All
see
right,
what Christina
that's it.
means. It takes
Yeah.
over your entire screen when you share.
That's what Christina was complaining about.
Yeah, let's see.
All right. One more, I think. All right. So I was, Teresa, were you or Christina going to present the Stif revenue projections?
Christina had to step away for a minute, so let me go ahead and show you a little bit about the revenue projections that we're anticipating at this point. So the following, the slide that we're looking at right now shows the estimated revenue projections for Clackamas County only. So again, dollars are being collected statewide through the Department of Revenue, and then those dollars are allocated based on the location where those dollars are collected, or in other words, where the payroll is. So it doesn't matter where someone lives, it just matters where they work. So with that being said, there's a total of $9.3 million that is being collected in Clackamas County. And out of that, TriMet retains a little over $7 million. As you're all, I'm sure, aware, TriMet is the largest service provider in the county on the more urbanized western edge of the county. Camby is estimated to collect $333,000, Sandy $144,000, South Clackamas out in Molalla. Hold on just a second. South Clackamas out in Molalla is projected to collect $239,000, and Wilsonville is projected to collect a little over $1 million. So these dollars are what we call our formula dollars. So these are dollars that are distributed based on a formula that looks at where that money is actually generated. So the amount of money that is being paid to Canby is based on the amount of money that is being generated in Canby's boundary. The amount of money that's being paid to Wilsonville is the amount of money that's being generated within the Wilsonville service district. The amount of money that Clackamas County receives is basically kind of, you take the total and you subtract the amount that's being distributed to everybody else. And all of the unincorporated areas in Clackamas County that don't have a transit service district, those are the dollars that go directly to Clackamas County. Andy, you can move on to the next slide. The next slide then looks at the estimates for fiscal year 24-25, which is the second year of the biennium. As you can see, there's a modest increase. The bottom number, the total number, is a little bit off. It's missing a number, but it still shows the estimates of what we believe will be collected in those districts. There was a question in the chat from Ray with Clackamas Community College asking about how the Clackamas Express shuttles and the last mile shuttles are funded. Part of the money that TriMet receives is allocated to a program that they call, so it's the dollars that TriMet receives that are being generated within TriMet's service district borders. They have taken a few $1 million of that money and put it into a program that they call the Regional Coordination Program. So services that operate inside of the TriMet service district, or in some cases that connect into the TriMet service district, are funded through those regional coordination dollars, which are part of the TriMet formula funds. So the last mile shuttles, for example, that are currently being operated by Clackamas County, are actually being paid for, because those are operating within the Clackamas industrial area in Oregon City, are actually being paid for out of these regional coordination dollars, which are a portion of, in this case, the $7.1 million that TriMet receives from Clackamas County. So, and that is the same situation for the Clackamas Community College's Express Shuttle. Those dollars are also, because that service operates within the TriMet Service District, are also being paid for out of those regional coordination dollars. So these, again, are revenue projections. They're estimates that are based on our best guesses for what collections are going to look like. They can be severely impacted by economic factors. If there is a huge drop in employment, if those dollars go down severely, there can be a lot of under collection, in which case then we would all be shorted on the amount of money that we can get. We've also had the scenario where collections have exceeded these projections. If collections exceed these projections, those dollars still go based on the formula that's used to determine where dollars are generated. Those dollars still go to the communities in which they are generated. So it's not a situation where if there's $2 million of extra collection, or it wouldn't be 2 million, but if there's $500,000 in extra collections in Clackamas County, that just automatically goes to TriMet or stays with the state or does something like that. Those dollars continue to be distributed out to the communities. And if they are not allocated to be spent in the current planning cycle, they will be spent in future planning cycles. Does anybody have any questions about the revenue projections or any of the information that I just provided about the funding?
Teresa, I will add quickly before any other questions. In looking at Wilsonville, I think it's important that the committee understand that those numbers, the projections there, are only represent the monies that Wilsonville collects in Clackamas County, because of course Wilsonville is in both Clackamas and Washington counties, and so the difference is another 250 to 300,000 added to what you see on the screen would be the range for SMART in Wilsonville. So just for full disclosure on that.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm not even sure what the next slide is, Andy.
Let's see.
Go from there.
All right. It's the presentation portion of the meeting, where each one of the providers will kind of go through, and very high level at this point. The next meeting will kind of be more specific. But this is more of a high level view of kind of how we see the funds flowing in, and some of the projects that will likely be in the plan for this committee to approve. So it looks like we're kicking off with Christina. Is Christina back with us?
I'm just going to jump in here really quickly and say hello, Amy. Amy joined us from Columbia Area Transit.
Welcome.
In Hood River. Yep. So welcome. Yes. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Yeah, yep. Thank you. I'm sorry I was late.
Yeah.
No worries. Glad to have you.
Yeah, we've decided there will be no fines for tardiness this round, but next round, very heavy fines. So anyway, just joking. All right. So if Christina, looks like Christina is back with us, so we'll turn it over to Christina. Christina, you're on mute or something.
There we go. Sorry about that. I am back. So quickly, I want to start out by going through the impact of Stif dollars in Clackamas County in this current biennium. So we've used the STIF dollars here in Clackamas County to do a couple service expansions. One of them is a service expansion up in the Mount Hood area, which allowed us to operate an additional run a day on our Mount Hood Express and an additional run on Shuttle, and that has been quite successful in terms of providing people more options to get to work, and then for people to come off the mountain in those smaller mountain communities into Sandy to handle doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, and other critical life needs there. We also, I know Teresa talked a little bit about the regional coordination dollars, so we also used regional coordination dollars to implement a couple last mile shuttles in Clackamas County. We currently have one in Oregon City, and then another one serving the Clackamas industrial area in Clackamas. Some of the money has gone to purchase new vehicles, and when I say infrastructure, it's really talking about technology. So we've recently moved forward with getting some new technology for not only our Mount Hood Express buses, but also our last mile shuttles, and then our Transportation Reaching People program, which is a program at the county that is a demand response service for residents of Clackamas County that are 60 or older or experiencing a disability. And so that program picks people up at their homes and drops them off at doctor's appointments or dialysis or supportive services at a church or an adult center, and grocery shopping and pharmacies and all those critical things that are needed when seniors are aging in their homes but unable to transport themselves. And then one of the big ones there is the third bullet down, which is the part of the focus of STIF dollars are an increased coordination of services between transit providers. So we did a study last year on how we could integrate some of our fare services. And this year we're actually working on an integrated website for Clackamas County where people can go to one website and get the information for all of the providers in Clackamas County, allow them to better utilize trip planning software, understand how all of our services connect and how they connect to TriMet. Next. There we go. So I spoke briefly about Mount Hood Express. Mount Hood Express operates 7 days a week out of Sandy and goes all the way up to Timberline Lodge, making a handful of stops on the way. It is called an express. And so because of that, it does have limited stops, but we do stop at a few of the critical locations to pick people up. And then we offer additional service on the weekends and holidays. And then we also offer an additional run during the winter season, as skiing up at Timberline is quite popular, and actually we've seen an increase in popularity due to the price of lift tickets at Meadows. So Timberline has been quite popular, and then their incorporation of the Summit ski area where people can ski from the top all the way down to Government Camp has been pretty popular this winter season. And then I said we run a village shuttle service, which is a deviated fixed route service serving the communities between Sandy and Rhododendron. So lots of stops in those communities, and if people need to get to the bus or off the bus, we'll drop them off at a specific location as long as it's within 3/4 of a mile of the route. Amenities on the Mount Hood Express include all-day passes. We carry ski boxes for skis in the winter, so we don't have to have skis on the bus. And then we carry bike trailers in the summer so that people can put their bikes on it. And then the last point there shows dramatic growth. And the last number I put in there was 2019, which was pre-COVID, which is an important number because our ridership has not fully recovered from COVID yet. And so that 2019 number is really probably the most accurate reflection of the growth that's happened in the last 6 years. So Clackamas County Shuttles, touched on these briefly. We, with regional coordination dollars, we implemented these 2 shuttles in July of 2021. So the first one is called the Oregon City Last Mile Shuttle, and it operates from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, serving key activity centers in Oregon City. So it starts over at the Oregon City Shopping Center, connects into the Transit Center, Clackamas Community College, comes back around and touches on the social service buildings at Clackamas County, hits the hospital, and then comes back down to the Transit Center. And then we have our Clackamas Industrial Shuttle, which it says 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, which is true, except for there's a break midday right now. We kind of have like AM service and PM service. But we are looking to combine that and make that a straight through service. And that starts at Clackamastown Center and loops down to the industrial area in Clackamas, hits the Veterans Village off of Jennifer, which has sorely needed transportation services for many years. And so that's been a popular stop, and it allows them to connect up to Clackamastown Center and clearly the Green Line, and then all of the other TriMet services that are offered there at Clackamastown Center. Next. All right, so real quick, 23-25 Stif plans include the continued funding for the existing Mount Hood Express service expansion. We're looking to use some of those dollars to provide increased demand response services for seniors and persons with disability. The current I just lost the word that I was going to use. The current demand for our services far exceeds the resources that we currently have available. So we have quite a few turndowns on a daily and monthly basis for that program at Clackamas County. So we're going to look to use some of those dollars to either, add additional drivers, vehicles, or potentially utilize other forms of transit like cabs or Uber or Lyft to help get people to these critical appointments that they need to get to. We are going to use Stif as match funds for the purchase of 2 buses. So we have a grant with federal dollars that's going to allow us to purchase a bus for Mount Hood Express and a bus for transportation reaching people. But we need to include match on those. And so that match will come from STIF dollars. The transit hub is a facility up on the mountain that is kind of being planned right now, or envisioned, if you will, to connect transit providers that are coming into the Mount Hood recreational area at Government Camp. So the Mount Hood Express goes up there, Columbia Area Transit comes over there, and then CET comes up from the Bend, Warm Springs area. And we're looking for a place where people could park at the base of the mountain, connect with transit services, and then utilize that hub to implement shuttles or other forms of transportation to get people up the hill in less individual vehicles, and moving them up and down the hill in larger vehicles with experienced drivers to cut down on accidents and delays in that way, and also to get some vehicles off the road. So in 23-25, what we're looking to do is further develop that idea, come up with some renderings of what that might look like, pick a potential site, and then continue to try to push that project forward. And then I think the second to last bullet there is another big piece of what our plan is. And that's really to address missing connections that are identified in the transit development plan. So that's working with our other small transit providers to help understand how we can better connect all of our services and how Clackamas County can help support connecting those services. So that might look like working with Andy out in Sandy as an example to bring services into Clackamastown Center so that she can connect, with our shuttle at Clackamastown Center, but also to TriMet, and what can Clackamas County do to help identify and support those connections. So that's kind of a brief overview of our 23-25 plans. I don't want to get in too much detail because I know we'll be going over those at the later meeting. Teresa or I both work for Clackamas County, and we're both always available. So contact information's on the screen, and please feel more than free to reach out to us should you have questions or concerns.
All right, thank you, Christina. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out, Christina is a very valuable part of the coalition of small providers, and we meet weekly, as I discussed, and she provides great insight and a lot of technology support. The presentation, as pretty as it is, was put together by Christina, and so we couldn't do any of this without her help. So we certainly want to acknowledge that. Are there any questions about for Clackamas County before we move on to Canby Area Transit? Any questions at all? And of course, there'll be an opportunity at the very end if we have general questions about anything you've seen or heard. All right, with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Todd Wood, who is the Transit Director for Canby Area Transit and one of the team members on the Coalition of Small Providers.
Hi. My name's Todd Wood. I am the Transit Director for Canby Area Transit. I've been here for about, 2.5 years now. So I took this over just at the same time COVID started, so it's been a lot of fun. So Camby, located just south of Oregon City and really on the very edge of Clackamas County. We run services all the way from Oregon City to Woodburn. We've got about 18,000 population right now. We're in an interesting spot here. We've got a lot of businesses and a lot of people choosing to move to Camby. So our growth has actually been faster than expected, which is good for us and it's good for business, but it means that we are trying to grapple a little bit with the services we provide. As far as I stated originally, we run the 99X, which runs along the 99E corridor, and it runs Monday through Saturday from Oregon City all the way through Canby to Woodburn. We connect to TriMet. In Canby, we connect to Wilsonville and South Clackamas. And when we get into Woodburn, we connect with the Woodburn services as well as the Salem service. So that's a really helpful service for most people who need it, because it allows them to hit all these places as well as connect with everything around us, which is great. Also, Monday through Saturday, we have the demand response paratransit services for our elderly and disabled population. That's one of our most important services. We also run a shopper shuttle, a free shuttle for those who need to get to the store. We run that 2 days a week, and that's part of that. And then we have general public dial ride, which is part of that program as well, which if we have enough room left in our buses, we can throw just anybody on there who wants to ride. So this last year, we just started the Camby Loop service, a much requested service from our constituents, which runs a single bus from 5 a.m. or actually 6 a.m. to about 8 p.m. through the city of Canby. It loops through the north and south and hits all the major stores, parks, and businesses to allow people to connect to those. We do a pretty robust high school group that jumps on the bus and gets to high school, because the high school buses do not pick up kids within 1.5 miles, which is which the entire city is like 1 mile long. So that seems a little strange, but that's the way it's run right now. That's our current ridership is a little on the low side. We're still recovering from the COVID pandemic. You can see our 99X on the weekdays, only about 48,000. Normally we're in the 60s, and our dial ride is usually about 12, and we're down at about 11. On the weekends, it's about steady. We're about 4,000 and 700, so that's pretty normal. Our loop, which we just started in October, has seen about 6,000 people. So we're now approaching around 1,000 a month in ridership. So that's pretty exciting there. People are using that. All right, flip forward one. All right, so our current Stif projects, the projects that we've used Stif money for so far, we started our Saturday services in 2019 at the request of the population. And this is our 99 that goes all the way from Woodburn to Oregon City, and we run that in roughly the same time frame as we do our weekday service. We included demand response and paratransit services for that. It doesn't run quite as long as the fixed route. It's about 8 to 5, but it's also included on Saturdays. And it's been a fairly successful service. Ridership isn't amazingly high, but it's still very, very used. We purchased 2 buses, which I'm told, knock on wood, that have arrived at Creative. We purchased them almost 2 years ago, or we ordered them almost 2 years ago with Stif funding, and it looks like maybe I can pick them up this month. I'm very hopeful for that, so I might actually get those. And the Canby Loop is our newest service funded with Stif funds. We began that in October. And it's a fixed route service that goes throughout the city of Canby. It runs every 28 minutes right now. So we run about, I want to say about 22 times a day between 5 and 8. And it sees a pretty decent ridership. We just recently recalibrated a little bit to meet the demand of the middle school and the grade school, because they were hoping that we could start to pick their kids up as well during the day, because again, the buses don't pick them up because they're too close to the school. And we got quite a few high school students that use it. Then we have a lot of folks that are using it for grocery shopping and just to get to the area businesses. So it's been a fairly successful service so far, and we were hoping to continue. All right, forward. There we go. So as far as our future Stif projects go, the services we have now basically have tapped out most of the funding we have. So we want to continue our 99X on the weekends and our demand response and paratransit on the weekends as well. We want to continue the Canby Loop service, keep it going Monday through Friday. We have one route right now. If the funding comes in a little bit higher, or if we have enough carryover, we might consider expansion of that one route in the future. But really what people are asking for is the addition of Saturday service to the loop. So if I come in, I think I'm figuring about $50,000 to $60,000 additional for the Saturday edition. So if I'm up at that level, I'll probably add Saturday service to the loop. And then if we have even more money, I don't know how that'll work, but if we happen to have enough, there's been a desire for dial-a-ride service on Sunday, mainly earlier in the days. They'd like us to serve the church-going population. I have a lot of elderly folks who don't have access to their services, would like access to their services, so they're asking that we consider a briefer dial-a-ride service, maybe from 8 to 1 or 8 to 2, to allow for those type of things, as well as some basic shopping throughout the day there as well. And then, of course, with the STF and STIF integration, we want to continue to support our current elderly and disabled population with our current dial-a-ride service. Right now, STF and 5310 are what fund our dial-a-ride service. So we want to make sure that's still built into this new Stif program to keep that service going. And I think that's it. Let's see. Yep, that's it. You have my contact info there. If you have any questions, you give me a call, write me an email, and of course, there's our website if you're interested in learning more.
All right, thank you, Todd. And I realize I can't see everyone, so if you have a question or a comment, just please unmute yourself and let us hear it. So thank you very much, Todd. And we will move on to Sam, Sandy Area Metro, and Andy Howe, who is a valued member on the Coalition of Small Providers in Clackamas County, and she happens to be the current president of the Oregon Transit Association. So she's big stuff there. So anyway, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Dwight. Appreciate that big stuff plug. Welcome everybody. I know most of you pretty well, so I am going to be pretty brief in my presentation. As you guys know, we are a department in Sandy, Oregon. We are owned and operated by the city of Sandy. We, as you saw in the previous slides, actually, out of all of the STIF funding, we get the least. We are small but mighty out here with a pretty robust regional transit service. We have our main workhorse service is a commuter express service between the city of Sandy and Gresham. We also have a service that serves between Sandy and Estacada. And again, that is also a commuter service, so an express service with not too many stops in between Sandy and Estacada. We, in 2017, started a shopper shuttle. That's an in-town service. We were having some problems at the time keeping our dial-a-ride service on schedule. We had a large demand and a lot of people with mobility issues using the service, which was causing our schedule to kind of go astray. So we looked at the dial-a-ride services and found that there were a specific areas in town that were getting heavy use, and we designed the shopper shuttle around those neighborhoods. It became very popular pretty much immediately, really helped our dial-a-ride. We were allowing same-day scheduling on our dial-a-ride, but when our schedule was had such demand, we had to stop allowing same-day scheduling. The shopper shuttle did allow us to return to same-day schedule by pulling some of that demand onto this fixed route in town. It is a deviated route, actually, so it can, if you are within 3/4 mile of the route, you can request that we come over and pick you up if you aren't able to walk to a stop. We, as I mentioned, also have a dial-a-ride service here in town that serves up to and within 3 miles of the center of town. And we have an out-of-town non-emergency medical ride. So we take people to hospitals or specialty clinics for services outside of town that aren't available here in the city of Sandy. All of our in-town routes are free. And if you are eligible for ADA, that is free as well. If you are traveling outside of town, say to Gresham or Estacada, then it's $1. If you're traveling to Sandy from those locations, it's $1. And that non-emergency medical rides is $2. We do, although it's not on here for you, we do have all-day passes, which we share with Mount Hood Express. So you could buy a $5 pass and ride on both of our services. And we also have 24 trip passes and monthly passes as well. So various ways to save. Our ridership from 2021, as you can see, our fixed route ridership is just over 69,000 and our dial-a-ride was 9,000. Typically pre-COVID, we would be anywhere from 111 to 120-ish for the past several years. So we have also not quite recovered our ridership from COVID. I will also add that we are currently experiencing some driver shortages, as most agencies throughout not just the state of Oregon, but the nation. And that, I believe, is also contributing to some of our ridership issues there. Our dial-a-ride in particular is not recovering as quickly as our fixed route. Our fixed route is picking up and has been picking up for the past several months. And I believe part of the issue with dial-a-ride is that we just don't have the extra drivers. So we do have a pretty large unmet need occurring that hopefully we can fix by getting some drivers through the door, which I will say that we recently redid our contract with our contractor and we increased our wages, and that does seem to have helped. We have several drivers, just yesterday, 3 passed their CDL training. And so we'll have 3 on board here in the next couple of days. And then we have, I believe, 3 or 4 more that are in training right now. So fingers crossed, we will be fully staffed very soon. And I get to move my own slide. Okay, so I put STIF funding on one slide. With our STF funding, we expanded the 3 fixed routes. So we added an evening run to the Sam Gresham Monday through Friday. That evening run was really needed because we had a late night run that if you came down off the mountain, there was no Sam to get you back to Gresham if that was your original location or where you boarded. So that helped close that gap with our partnership with Mount Hood Express at the county. We added a desperately needed run to the Estacada route, which had, due to some funding issues, we had dropped the Estacada service down to 4 runs. It really needs 5 runs to be successful. We did see ridership really increase significantly after we added that 5th run. It's actually Monday through Saturday rather than Monday through Friday. Sorry about that. And we actually rerouted our shopper that I just talked about, where we started in 2017 and we covered the south side of town. We rerouted that shopper to cover not just the south side of town, but also our north side of town, which is where our middle school and our high school are located. So we added 2 runs Monday through Friday to the shopper. It originally only had 3, which were middle of the day. And again, that was because that particular service was designed to help our dial-a-ride, which our heavy demand at the time was noon to 3. And so that's where the original hours and route came from. With the STIF funding, we had the ability then to reroute it to cover both and to cover in the evenings. So STIF funds also have a criteria that you try to serve school districts and in particular after school programs. And so this allowed us to reroute that shopper to get some of those kids home after they have whatever might be happening after school for them. So whether it's athletics or band or whatever. And actually, again, that was also very popular, and we saw our student ridership increase significantly until COVID. For our 24-25 plans, we hope to add Saturday service to this shopper shuttle. So one of the things, City of Sandy did just have a transit master plan update, which was approved by our city council in April of 2020. And the most requested service addition from our public was to add Saturday service to that shopper shuttle. So that is what we intend to do. We will continue with our expanded service of our 3 fixed routes and hopefully add that Saturday service to our shopper. We also had set some funding aside for future expansion here at the Operations Center at the City of Sandy. We are quickly outgrowing our administrative space here at the City of Sandy. And so we did earmark some funds to help add some training rooms and break rooms and room for our staff. And then one of the things that we actually did right from the beginning is we added, and it looks like a couple of things got dropped off here, but we added several capital improvements, which you see is dispatch and administrative computers and monitors. We did get a new transit tax software. So City of Sandy does collect a payroll tax and the transit department collects that payroll tax. We got a new dispatch software with STIF funding. We had several bus stop improvements with that funding, some solar panels added for lights, new garbage receptacles. We rebranded at the time, the entire city rebranded. And so Sam got new bus stop signs that match the city's branding and so forth. And that is pretty much us in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. There's my phone number and my email. And if not, we can move to Tom Strader, although I believe it's going to be Mike this morning. So sorry, Mike, that you're not on this slide.
Thanks.
Oh, that's okay. Tom took the day off today, so I said it's time for me to start riding the pony and quit petting it. Anyway, so hey, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon now, I should say. Mike Strock. I am taking over for Tom Strader as the new district manager out here for South Clackamas Transportation District. And we're headquartered in Molalla. We have a nice newer building out here and a small parking area for our buses. And our buses are managed through a contract service called Marson Transit. And we've been operating in Clackamas County since 1989. And if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. And we actually serve a very large rural community, over 100 square miles, and we have a population in excess of 20,000 people, and it is growing. We mainly service, Molalla, Malino. We have buses going to Canby and up north. Clackamas Community College to connect with Clackamas County's route, and also TriMet, who picks up and drops off up there at Clackamas Community College. Our Clackamas Community College route is our kind of bread and butter route. It does most of our ridership, over 60%. And then we also have our route that goes to Canby and our city route that services the city of Molalla. Our city route for the city of Molalla will do deviations similar to what Sandy does and Canby probably, and we'll do that with advance notice of 24 hours, and we'll deviate from the route up to 3/4 of a mile. And our city route service is free, And our commuter routes that service Clackamas Community College and Canby, we charge $1 is the fare each way for those services. So we have 3 main routes that start up here in Molalla: the city route, the Canby route, and the college route. That's what we call them. Next slide, please. So some of the accomplishments that we have had with our Stif dollars, we were able to add some extra early morning service trips to the Clackamas Community College route. And also we were able to add Saturday service to the city route. And Canby, we extended an extra runs in the morning and in the evening. So we've been able to increase the service to each of those routes. Some of our things that we're trying to do to improve rider safety and comfort include some of the things that Andy mentioned. We're doing some solar powered lighting in some of our bus shelters. We're looking to have a few extra bus shelters installed throughout some of our routes. Also looking at better identifying our stops with more visible bus stop signs. Right now there's just a lot of signs, you know, they're taped to telephone poles and things like that. They don't look the best and kind of hard to see. So we're trying to improve that. We have a lot of that on order, and also working on the various permitting processes that need to be done through, you know, like ODOT and the cities and things like that to get those installed on the right of way. We're also looking to improve rider information so that they can have better up-to-date real-time information as to, you know, where the buses are at, how far away they are from the stops, and always working towards getting new vehicles purchased through the various grant processes. We have 2 that are on order. They've been delayed, as I'm sure many other transit organizations are experiencing some issues getting new buses. So we're having that same issue, and then we're getting ready to order 2 more. Next slide, please. So some of our opportunities and future plans, obviously would love to try to continue with the same increased service that we've been able to provide, the added morning service to the college, the Saturday service within the city route, and the extra service to Canby. Again, I talked about the vehicles a little bit before. And we're just continuing to look for ways to make our stops more visible to our riders, make them safer, looking at adding some seats at some of our stops and things like that. A lot of our stops are very rural stops, kind of, you know, maybe along Highway 213 and in different places like that. So we're just looking to make those more visible to the riders. And I think that's it with the next slide. All right, there we go. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions. No? Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure who's next.
Well, we'll take it. Thanks, Mike, and welcome to the team. We certainly all look forward to working with you on a number of exciting projects in the Clackamas County region. So thank you again. All right, the next group up is a group that I'm familiar with. It is SMART, South Metro Area Regional Transit, owned and operated by the city of Wilsonville. And I am just the transit director, which really doesn't mean anything. I've got a team, or there is a team, I should say, that really makes me look good. And so I'm just a figurehead. And so I will turn it over to Eric Loomis, who is our operations manager, and Kelsey Lewis, who is our grants and programs manager for our portion of the presentation.
Good afternoon, committee members, committee chair Brashear, and members of the public. So SMART, as you can see with the numbers here, SMART is in a unique position where we have a similar ratio people that come into SMART or come into Wilsonville rather and work, and then people that go out into the greater metro area as well, compared to our population of about 27,000. So naturally, our transit system provides service to other communities within the area, Canby, Salem, and Tualatin, and we've been doing that prior to the STIF funding. Whereas the STIF funding created more frequency for those particular routes. We also have in-town service that goes to our transit center and meets the TriMet West commuter rail, heavy commuter rail train during the commuter hours. And our goal there with meeting that West train is to get any commuters anywhere in Wilsonville within about 10 minutes of time. So it makes it reliable for people coming into Wilsonville or again, those commuters that are going to the greater metro area or to the south. We also do other programs, Dial-A-Ride, ADA, but beyond that, we provide service for Wilsonville residents and visitors for 60 plus and general public, and those services are all for free in town. We have some smart options. We do a bicycle rodeo, safe routes to school, and Be Safe, Be Seen campaigns all throughout the year on top of some of the transit-related routes that we do. And soon we will have some van pools to businesses in Wilsonville. That program has been, Kelsey has been working on that program for some time now, and so that's about to come to fruition. And of course, all of our services are free. They're now free, start out free in town, then we expanded that to Tualatin and then Camby. And so the only routes that require a fare is the trips to Salem, and the big part there is we share that route with Chariots. And so we'll have that fare for the foreseeable future, and then medical trips to the greater metro area. And so I'll turn it over to Kelsey Lewis for the planning project list.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Kelsey Lewis, again, Grants and Programs Manager for SMART. So we focused most of our presentation here on what we're planning to do with the next, the 23, 24, and 24, 25 years. And we broke it up by planning, operations, and capital. So this is about planning. We put funding in our plan for a Stif coordinator. That would be 1 FTE position for managing a lot of the work that is related to this Stif funding. We have had that in prior plans, but haven't been funded it. We have not funded it. So we're still putting it in this next plan. The next one is new this year, very exciting for all of us at SMART, the transit-oriented development. We're looking at doing it, what's called a TOD, transit-oriented development, next to our transit center. There is a little slice of land there that is currently undeveloped, and where the city is looking at doing an affordable housing complex there. And in the bottom floor of that, it's anticipated to have room for a customer service center where we would have folks there to ask questions, discuss different kinds of programs that we have. So we might operate some of our SMART options programs out of there, like bike camps or things like that. So we are putting 2 FTE for people to be there at the customer service desk. It would also be a space, an indoor space for people to get away from the rain while they're commuting. The next one on that list is Basalt Creek service study. So looking at the area to our north that is on the way to being developed, and seeing what kind of service options we could do there. And I think for the next slide, I'm going to hand it back to Eric.
All right, so we have a list of our operations and service projects. We have some continued services that we've had in the STIF program for a while. And I mentioned before, some of those programs were expanded frequency, some higher frequency trips, more trips to Tualatin Park and Ride that have connections to TriMet in downtown Portland and Beaverton. And then we also have Canby midday service that was added, and 1X service to Salem midday service that was added as well, and those continued services. The 205 Express service to Clackamas Center we have in the current plan, but we want to make sure that funding is continued into the next plan. That is a service along 205 from Wilsonville to Clackamastown Center. That's a partnership with Clackamas County and Washington County. And Ride Connection is a service provider there as well. So a lot of connections that right now there's just no service in that area. You have to basically go to downtown Portland and then back out to Clacamastown Center. So this is that southern east-west connection that we've heard that's a big need in this metro area. And then the 80X services to Woodburn is in partnership with City of Woodburn and Chariots. So Chariots is planning on that service to start up this fall. And then for this project plan FY 24-25, we would then follow suit in having a route that goes from Wilsonville to Woodburn and then on to Kaiser Station. So not an express similar to the 1X that goes directly to downtown Salem, but more of a community service that stops in Woodburn and Kaiser Station and then makes connections to downtown Salem. And then continued support of elderly and disabled transportation services, part of the STF that is transitioning over to STF, transitioning to SDIF, is our out-of-town dial-a program that we are at capacity at, and we would look to expand based on our driver shortage and bus shortage. We would look to do that in probably the second year there as well. So I'll turn it back over to Kelsey.
All right. All of the things here on this list have been, I believe, except for maybe the bus stops, on our prior plan. So first, electric charging infrastructure. This means we have currently 3 electric buses, battery electric buses. So this would be in that time frame, we'd probably be wanting to purchase another electric bus, and that would be providing another charger. We have included funding in this Stif plan for the match for federal grants for new buses for expanded service. That would be the service in Woodburn and Clackamastown Center. And also facilities expansion. So this facility expansion would be our smart building facility, mostly focused on allowing extra space for sort of circulation of the buses in and out, to have better security, so that we could have a gate security that works a little bit better. And then also undergrounding some of our electric charging facility so that we have more space for bus parking. And then the last one is what it sounds like, just updating bus stops, perhaps adding more amenities to existing bus stops, like lighting or a shelter or new signage. So those are all things that we're really excited about doing. I think that is the end. Yep, that's the end. So if anyone has any questions for us, you can ask the team, all of us.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kelsey and Eric. And I think it's important to note that SMART is a small provider like the others. However, we do have a few more staff members than say some of the other team, the small providers do. And what we like to do is we share. And so if one of the other small providers has a need where Eric or Kelsey or I have some other team members can help out, we do that, and we do it graciously. We love to do it. We love being part of Clackamas County and being part of the small providers team. So we're all for one and one for all. So thank you both very much. And so let's go back and just ask, are there any questions about anything you've heard thus far before we move into okay, it looks like we have a hand raised. Paul, please unmute yourself and ask the question, please. You're still muted. Yeah, we're not hearing anything, Paul. Oh, he left the meeting. So we'll give him a chance to get his technology together. And so we'll now move into the public comment portion. It looks like Paul's going to join us here, but we'll get through the public comment. This is where we give the public an opportunity to make any comment about the committee, about HB 2017, what they've heard here today. So are there any members of the public? So this is not for the committee members. Any member of the public interested in making a comment?
It looks like Paul's back with us, Dwight.
All right.
Hey, Paul. Looks like you're still muted. I'll see if I can. Oh, you're not muted, but we still can't hear you for some reason. Let me.
All right. Well, are there any members of the public wanting to make a comment? Anybody see any hands out there? All right. If we don't see any, then we'll close the public comment portion of our meeting.
Hey, Dwight.
Yes.
Can we allow Paul to maybe type something in the comments if he has something he wants to type in?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You can do that. Yeah. Yeah, we know how technology is. Sometimes when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, well, I call Eric or Kelsey. Doesn't work. So we have options.
So Paul, can you find the chat feature, Paul, that should be at the bottom of your screen, and it looks like a little
I thought it was a flag at first, but it's not.
yeah, flag.
Yeah, it says chat with everyone. All right, we see your hand there. All right. Well, we'll kind of go through the next steps, and if Paul gets something in the chat or is able to get his mic working, then we'll deal with that. So just on the screen there, next steps. So Andy, I believe, has agreed to work on scheduling the next meeting, and that'll be to walk through the specific projects that each provider is looking at putting forth in their plan. And we thank Andy for doing that. So if you get an email from Andy on a doodle poll or something like that, please respond as quickly as you can. It's like herding cats sometimes, and so we want to make sure that we don't age Andy prematurely on these things. So, and then of course, approval of the projects. The committee will be asked to either approve or disapprove of the projects based on the presentations. And once we receive approval, which I hope will be at that next meeting, that plan will be packaged together and submitted to TriMet for inclusion in their plan. And there will be an opportunity during the HB 2017 TriMet's advisory committee for the small providers to present their plans during one of those advisory committee meetings. And then once that's approved, TriMet packages it all together, takes it to their board for approval. And once that happens, then it goes on to, I think eventually, and ultimately it goes to the OTC, the Oregon Transportation Commission for final approval. Once that happens, then the funds can start flowing to the small providers and of course TriMet, so that they can implement all of the neat programs that we talked about and we will talk about at the next meeting. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Teresa, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Andy, and I'm just kind of leaning on some of the small providers.
I think you hit all the points, Dwight. Most
Okay.
importantly is that we will be at the next meeting voting on specific plans for the 24-25
Right.
STIF.
Absolutely. And I think maybe at the next meeting, if Christina's willing to talk a little bit about some of the discretionary funds that we've been successful in getting and what we've done as a group of small providers working together on some of the website stuff and fare integration and stuff like that, because there are some things that we've worked on together. And I think the committee would be interested in hearing about some of those things. So if time permits, I think I'd like to see that. Is Paul back with us? Is he able to communicate? I don't see anything in the chat. All right. Well, that's a bummer.
Oh, there's some chat.
Okay. All right. What do we have? Let's see. Okay, so Paul is a member of the Clackamas County Community Action Board and have been on the Clackamas County Transportation Committee. He's a retired business systems analyst. Wow. Okay, so he's a computer person. So that's good to know. Very helpful. Paul, did you have a specific question about the plans or any of the presentations that you heard today? Give him a chance to respond. All right, as we okay, he says he just wants them to make sense. So and I agree, and I think early on, if you're new to this committee, it is quite a bit to take in. But I think the next meeting, everything will start to congeal. It will all come together, and it'll be certainly much easier to understand. You know, some of us that are transit folks, you know, this is second nature to us, but we have to understand that it is not second nature to everyone. So we want to try to make it as lucid as we possibly can. And so we will endeavor a good comment, Paul, and we will you know, endeavor to make it all make sense during our second meeting. And so with that, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, and I think we'll give everybody 10 minutes back, unless there are questions from anyone. 300 years experience. Okay, he has over 300 years experience. Well, that is something I'd like to get into a little later, Paul. Talk about that. I have quite a few myself, but not quite the 300. So.
Looks like you meant 30, Dwight. So you and he are on par together.
Oh, okay. Then we're, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's impressive. But 30 is impressive as well. I feel like, I started when I was 10, so I'm still doing it. But all right, well, great. Anything else from anybody before we call it a Friday? For some of us, anyway?
I'd
All
like
right.
to just thank everybody again for taking 2 hours out of their Friday to help us chug through transit in Clackamas County.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Here, 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 here. Yes, thank you. And if there are members of the public out there, we thank you for joining us as well. And we look forward to the next meeting. And Andy will set all of that up. So be looking for emails from Andy. And as I said, if you could respond quickly, 2 thumbs up on that. All right. So thank you all. And we will bid you a very, very good weekend. All right. Take care, folks.
Everybody.
All right.